Imagine humans colonized Mars in the 1900s. How would it look today? We sent the first crewed rockets into space in the 1920s. By the 1930s, we were launching V-2 rockets. And by the end of World War II, rockets were regularly traveling to the edge of space. If this trend had continued, perhaps today we'd be sipping tea with Martians. In the late 1940s, American rocketry pioneer Gerald Bull proposed a plan to land humans on Mars. This plan required giant rockets and giant spaceships. But Bull was convinced that these could be built with the existing technology of the time. His designs didn't rely on nuclear fusion or antimatter. He just wanted to build bigger things. The first step was a massive rocket called the Orbital Express. It would consist of 2 connected stages. Each stage would use a cluster of smaller engines to produce about 3,000 pounds of thrust. Together, they'd be able to lift over 100 tons into low Earth orbit. The ship itself would resemble a giant silver balloon. It would be made from multiple connected modules that could each hold up to 16 passengers in relative comfort. There would be room for scientific equipment too. And Bull imagined that there might even be some luxury accommodations like saunas. The plan was for the Orbital Express to take off from a platform in the Atlantic Ocean. Once it reached orbit, it would rendezvous with an even larger ship called the Colonial Transport, which would be waiting in geosynchronous orbit. The Colonial Transport would be a true behemoth. Its crew would consist of a captain, a pilot, and 9 passengers. It would also carry lots of scientific equipment and enough supplies to sustain the crew for months. The plan was for the ships to launch every 3 years when Earth and Mars were at their closest. The journey would take about 6 months. First, the Orbital Express would fly to the Moon, where the crew would spend a few days checking out the scenery and doing science. Then the Colonial Transport would rendezvous with the Moon, pick up the passengers, and head to Mars. Once the ships arrived at Mars, the plan was for the passengers to spend a few weeks in orbit doing reconnaissance before landing on the surface. They would bring back samples of soil and rock to study and hopefully begin construction of a permanent human settlement. So what would this Martian city look like? Well, probably something like this. The buildings would be made from giant prefabricated metal modules. These would be manufactured on Earth, shipped to Mars, and then assembled on the surface. The city would be surrounded by large domes. These would protect the inhabitants from harmful radiation and meteorite impacts. They'd also make it possible to maintain a breathable atmosphere. Inside, it would feel like one of those old-fashioned train stations, all polished steel and glass. There would be plenty of places to sit and relax, as well as cafes and bars serving futuristic cocktails. The city's power would come from giant solar panels. These would be mounted on the roofs of the domes. They would convert the thin Martian sunlight into the energy needed to keep the city running. Water would be scarce, so everyone would have to get used to living with very little. The climate inside the domes would be carefully controlled, but outside it would be a frozen desert. Temperatures would regularly dip below -200 degrees Fahrenheit. Life in the city would be tough, but it would also be beautiful. There would be parks and gardens filled with alien plants and wildlife. There would even be artificial lakes and ponds. The domes would be filled with natural light, giving the whole place a magical, almost ethereal feel. Of course, life on Mars wouldn't be all fun and games. There would be danger everywhere. The inhabitants would have to wear special suits whenever they went outside. Even then, they would only last a few minutes before their life support systems began to fail. There would always be the risk of meteor strikes and deadly dust storms. Not to mention the psychological effects of living in a closed environment with limited access to the outside world. Still, it would be an adventure. And there would be plenty of opportunities for exploration. The crew would venture out into the Martian wilderness and try to discover the planet's many secrets. They might even find evidence of ancient life. Who knows? Maybe there really are Martians living out there in the desert, waiting for us to find them. If you like optimistic science and tech stories, stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching Parallelish, where imagination bends reality. I'm Nova, your guide through the unknown. Want to explore more timelines? Tap the playlist above and keep diving into the what-ifs. Until next time, stay curious.